Hey, it's Fitz, and if you don't know who I am, here's a quick bio. I'm a veteran sports journalist who writes, does TV, radio, daily YouTube videos, and I'm a longtime podcaster. Also, I have metastatic stage 4 prostate cancer that came out of remission in January of 23. During the pandemic, my doctors advised me to stay at home, and the Life of Fitz podcast was born. My original diagnosis forecast that I would be dead by age 60. But as I start season 5 of this podcast, I am 60 and still calling the many friends, athletes, coaches, colleagues, and medical advisors who I've met throughout my life. Oh, and I'm still hitting the record button and now doing so on video. Welcome to my life and the Life of Fitz podcast. Presented by the great people at Blueville Nursery in Manhattan. The world of media has changed so much since I left the traditional media realm in 1995. I left the Salina Journal, where I was sports editor, and started doing a magazine, and the magazines became a website, and the website now became a YouTube channel. It's incredible. What I did when we started our company in 1998 virtually doesn't exist in my work duties anymore. It did not, almost none of it. And now I spend my time on YouTube and podcasting, and I was a writer. I was a writer and page designer by trade. So trying to keep up with things is very interesting. And while the media shifts, you also get exposed to different people. I mean, when I went to press conferences not that long ago, I wasn't even close to the oldest person. There was a lot of grumpy older sports writers, guys that have been doing it. And journalism, was still about newspapers. And now it's not. Now it's really about TV and even our websites. The what used to be fringe, the new media now is a trusted media source as those who just cover your school or your cause or whatever and are zeroed in on that. And because of that, we've seen an eruption of independent media. People now can run a TV station basically, but it's a YouTube channel. You have endless ability to post podcasts that if you do a good job with the podcast and you promote it right and it catches fire, someone explained to me how that happens. It can go a long ways. And it's created a whole society of media stars that wouldn't have ever had an opportunity before. Pete Mundo out of Kansas City is very interesting because he lives in both worlds. He has a morning radio show. He's the political guy on 710 in Kansas City at the morning show that, everyone has one in their market, the conservative talk show that starts off the day. But on the side, he runs Heartland Sports, which is a Big 12 focused channel that, does a lot of podcasts and videos and a great job with stories. And they just do a little bit of everything. And I greatly admire him because he juggles both of those balls. He hires great staff at Heartland. And as my company now moves into the Big 12 space, not just covering Kansas State alone, we now have a separate channel called the Big 12 Insiders. My friend Brian Hanley, a former K-State football player, hosts a show over there that will be daily through football season. And we'll see what basketball brings, but it might be 5 days a week during basketball too. It's a different world of media. It's a different way to collect your information. And the evolution is happening so fast. Even this show that used to be a podcast only this year moved into this visual realm because it's what the market wants. But let's get with Pete Mundo now and let's talk to him a little bit about politics, but I also want to talk about sports and the Big 12 and a lot of things that you probably would prefer to hear about because I do try to stay out of politics. You'll find a little bit about my leanings in this if you don't know, but I am a libertarian, and that means I don't have to vote in primaries. I'm proud of that. Let's get to our discussion with Pete Mundo, who comes to us from Kansas City, Missouri. And now we welcome in my buddy, Pete Mundo. Pete, I did pronounce that right. I think I said Mundu one time, and I'm like, that's not right.
I've heard a lot worse. I get called worse in my own house, Tim. I got 3 daughters, so whatever you want to call me, man, is fine. It's all good. But yes.
I will call you Big Daddy. How's that?
Now that's getting creepy on me, but I'm okay with it. Mundo, you nailed it, man. You nailed it.
Okay. Well, let's as I like to do in these things, kind of backtrack and get it's like the Star Wars screen before the show actually starts laying out the history. And that's what we do right here. I didn't know until doing research, which is a rare thing for me, let's be honest. You're a Villanova grad?
I am. Yes. And, good luck with our transfer that you took this off season. So have some fun with that. But anyway, 2010 graduate. And my first radio job was in Oklahoma. So my Big 12 stuff didn't really start until post graduation. And then I was in Oklahoma for a couple of years doing radio. I was, going to OU, Oklahoma State games, and it was 2011, 2012. So during that first round of realignment. So I got super into it and really just, ingrained myself in Big 12 football. I just loved the conference and, was traveling around. Life was good. And then went to New York after a couple of years and was working at CBS and Fox and really modeled Heartland College Sports after kind of a Saturday down south for the Big 12 because I was still watching. There was really no coverage. I had no idea what I was doing almost 10 years ago now, but it was fun. And 10 years later, here we are rocking and rolling. But it's been kind of a winding road and now back in Kansas City.
You were way ahead of the time with that.
Well, I tried to be. You know what? But it's like anything else, Tim. You think about it and you say to yourself, man, if I knew what I knew today 10 years ago, I think I could have expedited a few things, but that's just never how life works, is it?
But it's amazing within that 10-year window or whatever it is, how much technology has made this easier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think back to just trying to figure out WordPress 10 years ago and some of the basics. I mean, I'm putting together a podcast, right? Like all these, what we're doing now. You and I hopped on this call. I was here in 30 seconds after putting kids to bed. So it's just, it has changed largely for the better. I mean, there's always kind of the nonsense you deal with in a fractured media environment. But, I sit here today and I say, gosh, I mean, the fact that the barrier to entry is lower than ever is good because it does allow smart, competent people to break through, and I think that's what this is all about ultimately.
I've met some incredible creators that do this on the side, aren't journalists by trade. I mean, our friend John Kurtz is really good at this, but he's a journalist who moved into private sector and does his stuff on the side, and it's really good. But I've come across some people who have no journalism training, and it's fun that fans get to do podcasts and video casts, and most of the time they look like fans. The production isn't good, the hosting isn't great. It's just really raw, which is kind of cool at times too. It's really like listening to two guys just talk.
Well, think about it. I mean, the whole idea of what ESPN and Fox were doing and still do, but doing 10, 15, 20 years ago, and the edge that they had was kind of like the whole over super produced B-roll content. And the reality is, if you put on an entertaining product and it's just two guys talking like this or one guy talking, people will consume it. They don't need all the bells and whistles. They just want good content from interesting, smart, unique people who have something to say. And ESPN's always going to be overproduced. That's what they do. But, shows like this and YouTube and everything else on social media has proven that if you've got something to say and you know how to communicate, you can cut through all that. And, that's been good for ESPN because it's made them up their game. So we're all kind of up in our games because of the competition that exists now.
Yeah. I'm amazed though. There's people out there who I'm going to start doing this and are really damn good at it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun. But then you see other creators that are flourishing and you watch their show and you're like, you have great content. That's the only way you survive.
Yeah.
You have sources and you have good opinions and you involve your viewers in lives, but your setup isn't good. The shot doesn't look right. It's just funny how picky I can get. And it really doesn't matter in this environment.
No, you're right. And listen, I think it takes, I didn't study journalism at all. I was finance and real estate. And then, 2008 happened and I kind of said, well, let me try this media thing. But, it really takes you, people ask like, what do I do? How do I do it? Right. It's like, I think it takes you 10,000 hours. That's the old goal to really feel comfortable doing anything. and talking into a microphone and talking into a camera is not natural for a lot of people. So you've got to just do it and do it and do it and get feedback from people that you respect and hope you just keep getting better. But you're right. Some people can just turn it on, and I'm amazed by it, Tim. I really am, because I know that has not been me over the last 15 years. It's been a grind, man.
Yeah. Also, I think that the generation a step behind you had spent their entire life talking into a screen.
That's true.
Whether it's
That's
FaceTiming or actually doing social media where they're talking. So they're conscious of how they look, how they sound, how they present, which is something my generation didn't know a thing about. And we weren't doing any of that. So it's just very interesting to me how it's evolved. And this new generation is much more comfortable doing this as opposed to sitting down and writing a story. That's a challenge.
Yeah. And they also, won't look you in the eye and shake your hand, but they'll look you right in the eye and FaceTime, to your point. So if the screen's there, they're comfortable, but then you get them in person. I mean, we got some interns at Cumulus Radio here in Kansas City, and they're pleasant, they're do a nice job, but shake their hand, look them in the eye, and that's going to be tough, Tim. I'm not going to lie. It's not pleasant sometimes. I'm like, damn it, shake the hand, please. Give me a nice hard handshake. You're killing me here, kid.
It drives me crazy too. I totally agree. But that's the changing world in which we live. How we communicate.
I'm bringing back the handshake, man. That's all I can say.
I'm actually going to bring back the chest bump. Just in casual meetings. Nice to meet you, sir. Chest bump.
Well, a hell of a lot better than the dopey fist bump we did during COVID. I never want to see that again. My gosh.
At this point now, if someone sticks it out, I'm like, oh, okay.
I know. It's like, I guess. I mean, sure, but I can tell this conversation's not going anywhere because, my gosh.
Well, let's get to your radio career because it fascinates me. You were out on the East Coast. You did some stuff for Fox News Radio, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
CBS Sports. So you were in my neighborhood, which is kind of who we work with now. And how did you end up in Kansas City?
Well, I was first job was in Woodward, Oklahoma, which is up by the Panhandle, which I had mentioned, and I was there for 2 years. Got engaged to my wife, who I had met at Villanova, and she came out there. But man, I mean, amazing place, incredible people, still a lot of friends, but you are a good 2.5 hours from anything.
Yep.
2.5 hours to Oklahoma City, 2.5 hours go to your west to Guyman, you're 3.5 hours to Amarillo. Did a lot of Southwest Kansas high school football. My first high school football game was in Meade, Kansas. Coach Scott Mosier, great guy. Incredible environment, awesome group of people down there. But, I was all over it. Ashland, Kansas, all that Southwest quadrant, Garden City, Dodge, all those places. So it was great. But listen, it was pretty remote. So my wife tells me she's bouncing. She can't do it anymore. We were engaged. I said, well, I'm not letting you go without me. So I follow her to New York City and trying to figure out some radio jobs. And I start piecing together things with CBS News Radio. That leads into WFAN Radio, kind of their flagship sports talk in New York. CBS Radio came out of that, doing some national sports broadcasts, sports updates, did some fill-in shows. And then after about 4 years of that, I started doing some things at Fox News because I love sports. I was doing Heartland for a few years at that point, a couple of years, I guess. But in terms of my day-to-day, I was kind of getting more into the news. The world was going a little wild. And I said, I think I'm going to make this move. So I started doing more and more stuff at Fox News Radio. And I guess it was 2017, right after Trump got inaugurated, Alan Colmes, who you may recall from Hannity and Colmes, he died. He was doing a nighttime radio show, nationally syndicated through Fox News. And they wanted to make it a younger, more conservative leaning show. So I was doing 2 or 3 fill-in shows a week. I was feeling myself. I said, I might have a chance at this thing. And after probably 6 months, they give it to a guy named Guy Benson, who you may see on Fox News. So he gets the night gig at 6 to 9 at night. I thought that was going to be my big break because I was freelancing for 5 years at that point. Sports Illustrated, I did some stuff with them digitally and video-wise. but it was getting crazy. We wanted to start having a family and doing all that. And, the hours weren't conducive. I was doing overnight shifts here, late night shifts there. I'd go from one shift to another. I do a show on Fox from 6 to 9 at night. I do an overnight shift right after that, midnight to 6 for CBS. I mean, it was just getting wild. So we said, let's figure out where we want to go here. And let me try to find a full-time, daily radio gig. So we looked at Dallas, Oklahoma City, and Kansas City, because I also wanted to be in Big 12 country, because Heartland was starting to get, build and get better and start to take off. So I wanted to be back out in this part of the world. And I like the people out here anyway. It's more my speed, my style, what I agree with in life. It's all out here. So I thought I was maybe had an in Dallas. The program director already had his guy for an afternoon drive guy. And he said to me, I need a morning show up in Kansas City. So I said, let's give it a shot. So, that was January of 2018. And the first show on KCMO that I did was April 2nd of 2018. So it's been a 6.5-year ride now, which in radio, it's like dog years. That's like being somewhere for like 4 decades. So We're doing okay.
Yep. And you're the conservative guy. In a very strange political area, you have the strangest dimensions of politics in there. You've got, I don't know how to say this. The Missouri Republican Party is insane. And of course, Kansas City is very Democrat. Then you come across the state border, and I think the Kansas Republicans, at least some of them, are a little bit more moderate. Some are also insane. But it seems like no matter what you would say on a show, left, right, even down the middle, half your audience is going to be pissed off.
Oh yeah, that's every day. That's why I need my sports outlet. No, you're right. But here's the thing. I mean, you know this as well as anybody. You can't appease everyone.
No.
You cannot be everybody's best friend, because then you're saying nothing. I mean, you've just got to be compelling and interesting enough where they might say, gosh, 20, 30% of the time, Pete's totally wrong. But the other 70 is pretty good. And, even when I disagree, at least he makes some sense. I mean, that's what you kind of hope for. And I think that's what we've done with the show, just based on, the ratings growths and what we've seen and how the show's done in the 6.5 years. We really had nothing to start with. And that's one of the reasons I took the job. The station was kind of dead as could be. So I said, well, this thing can only go in one direction. And, it's grown nicely the last 6.5 years. But I used to worry about it. And now I just open the mic and I say what's on my mind. And, you hope you deliver it in a manner that's compelling, interesting, different, unique, and gives people something to think about. And you know what? The best part is, if they think you're a fool, they can call you up and tell you that. So, and that makes for great radio. So that's all I'm trying to do, is make good radio.
I get those calls all the time.
Yeah.
That was my wife. But
I mean, listen, we obviously are friends. We follow each other. You find yourself in the same position sometimes, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it really is. I've gotten sideways with KU fans over me questioning things, but I really have no animosity towards the University of Kansas. I'm just out here saying what I believe. And if you don't agree, I'm sorry. But at some point, politics went from politics to religion. And I feel like as our society has become less religious overall, in terms of, typical Christianity or Catholicism or whatever it is, we've gone less there. But now politics or the environment or other things have kind of substituted themselves for religion. COVID substituted for religion. Here's the rules I must follow to be a good human being. And I'm going to do this, even if it doesn't make sense. And it now you can't talk to people about politics. They get so polarized and angry immediately. It's just hard to have a conversation.
I think you nailed it. It is replacing religion with politics, which is just a dangerous game. But also, loneliness in human population right now is at an all-time high for as long as it's been studied. I mean, young people aren't getting married as early, if they get married at all. They're not having kids. They're not going to church. So what do? I mean, you replace, as human beings, we are looking to gather with other like-minded people around something. We are. And
Mhm.
ideally, it is some kind of faith-based operation. I think that that's proven to work societally and culturally for, centuries now at this point. But if it's not going to be that, politics is going to fill the void. Like, it's
Right.
interesting because sports is kind of still what it's always been. People come together for games, but sports has not filled that void like politics has. And I don't know if you have thoughts as to why, but it's interesting that politics has been the thing that people have leaned into. Maybe because they can latch onto the world's going to end if my guy or gal doesn't win.
Uh-huh.
But it's crazy because sports has kind of stayed where it's always been. Politics has filled the void.
And I think that's why when politics does enter the sports realm, whatever the topic is, kneeling for the anthem, whatever it is, I think that's why some people get offended. It's like, can we have this? Can we just have this free of all the other stuff going on in the world? So we want to watch sports. Give us sports, a competition. And
Mhm.
I think that was one of the friction points of the lockdown is they shut down everything. You just had no outlet, and your outlet became hating the others, hating those who oppose what you believe. And
I
with
think COVID
camera.
expedited it, but
Yeah.
it was happening. It's been happening, I would say, for the last 25 years. I think, 9/11 through the Iraq War into the Obama years, obviously Trump brings things to a new level for many people as well. COVID. And now, here we are this year, and just look at the last month and a half, right? I mean, we all know what's gone on in this country the last month and a half, and it's been bonkers. So I don't see it changing anytime soon. I'd want it to change. I mean, like, all this craziness is good for business, as I talk about it, but like, it's not good for the country. And I'll be okay without the crazy. Like, the
Yeah.
show will be fine. I don't know how it ends, Tim.
It ends badly unless
Yeah.
something happens.
Yeah.
We're just on a course right now. I posted something the other day, and it happened to be on one side of the aisle. Not necessarily what I posted. I just took an example, and some of the responses I got. I'm serious, Pete. If this had been in person, this person would have murdered me. They were that angry over saying, now in politics, we just make stuff up, pretend it's true, and say it over and over until people think it's true. We don't even go for the skeletons in the closet anymore. We just make them up,
Yeah.
and people get away with that. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of people are like, as a politician, that's okay. It's not okay. That's why we have crappy choices. That's exactly why we've made the process so untenable for any normal human being. It's You almost have to be a psychopath or a complete narcissist to enter the political realm to put up with the shit you have to take. I mean, it gets so personal and sometimes life threatening.
So we can curse here. That's okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I've got nothing. I try to keep it family friendly, but I'm glad I know if I let it slip, that's good with you. You nailed it though. I mean, it's really it's a sad state of affairs. And I just sit here and I say to myself, how does it end? I don't think the answer is well, to your point. I
Yep.
also don't think it's soon. I feel like we're on this kind of slippery slope, and I don't know where the cliff is. I don't know what causes us to hit that cliff and to fall right off it, but it's just not good. I mean, it could have been a few weeks ago with the assassination of Donald Trump. I mean, that could have been something that triggered, God forbid, the worst of the worst in this country. Thank goodness it didn't happen, but you think about some of these things the last few years alone, from COVID through the last month. I mean, it has been nuts. And that's why, to your earlier point, sports is such a great escape, and people don't want politics in their sports. I say it all the time. I don't want conservative politics in my sports either. I
Mhm.
don't want anything in my sport. But at the same time, what many can't figure out and differentiate is Colin Kaepernick from Harrison Butker. One guy in uniform doing a political protest compared to one guy in his own time as a private citizen at a Catholic college as a Catholic giving a speech he was asked to give is not the same as Colin Kaepernick being political. Okay. So if you can't differentiate those two things, I can't help you.
Let's take a short break and hear from our sponsor, Blueville Nursery.
For competitively priced landscape design, irrigation, and lawn maintenance, turn to Blueville Nursery, a family-owned business with more than 50 years of experience. You can trust the Blueville team to design and create a landscape that will accentuate your property's aesthetics. And visit our garden store 6 days a week for the best products in the area. From ornamental trees, shrubs, and flowers, Blueville has it all. Blueville Nursery, located on West Anderson Avenue in Manhattan, Kansas.
Now, let's return to the studio. Okay, enough of that. Let's turn our attention to sports, what we both love. First of all, you do a hell of a job with Heartland. You got a great crew. They do great content. I admire you. And I feel like what you do with Heartland, the guys down at Sikkim 365, what I'm attempting to do, what John Kurtz does, we've started the Big 12 Insiders. The Big 12 is going to have to be self-sufficient.
Yes.
We're not going to have people delivering media to our door. We got to grow it ourselves. And that's what's happening. And it's becoming a kind of big deal. Now we're seeing local podcasts just pop up left and right throughout the conference. And Pete, I love it. You don't have to rely on the national media anymore. People will kind of, funnel that information and interpret it for you. Now, there's a lot of people just seeking clicks that are just making stuff up, which is troubling. But it's a different world. The corporations aren't in charge of the media anymore. We are, and it's pretty cool. They don't like that at all. Although we always do this on a Google-based platform or YouTube, but they can kick you off for any time they want. But it's amazing. Now, citizens can communicate with citizens without the national filter, and not at a grassroots level. On a national level, we now see people from, what used to be the fringes now have huge followings. Who the hell ever thought Russell Brand would be a popular political commentator? It's just amazing what this video platform has done for the world.
It's amazing. And, this is, I didn't know where the world was going to be, obviously, 10 years ago, but part of my thought process was Heartland College Sports was like, all right, I love watching Big 12, ESPN and Fox. And this was pre-Big Noon Kickoff and all that stuff on Fox. So Fox wasn't really even in the college football space a lot. It was really just ESPN. And ESPN back then was just kissing the SEC's ass nonstop with, the Big Ten getting the extra love. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? So that's how this thing started. And obviously here we are 10 years later, and, we've lost teams. We've gained 8 new teams now the last couple of years. And you're right. I mean, there's a lot of us out there in the space. And I'm not 6-7 years ago, I would have viewed everybody as competitors. But now I'm like, this is great for all of us.
Yeah.
Everybody can help each other here. If you're obviously doing the right thing and doing good content and doing it fair and honestly, I'm going to support anyone who's in the space. Now, as you noted, some people are just kind of farming for clicks, but there's a lot of us doing it the right way. What we're doing, and just trying to keep this train humming right along, because the Big 12 is going to have to carry itself. And I think, in talking to people at the Big 12, they know what we're doing, they know what you're doing, and they know that, we're good for them as well.
Yeah, it's very organic. And we're seeing a lot of now kind of traditional journalists. Well, they're not traditional. My media isn't traditional. We used to be the fringe kook media with the fan sites, fan magazine, whatever. And now we're pretty damn mainstream, and we get calls to be the expert on different things. But this has just accelerated that. We don't need to be the guest on someone's show. We can have them on our show that we do on this platform.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's good for you. And you're right. You go back, 15 years, you guys were kind of the edgy new media, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say?
Oh, absolutely.
And look at where things are now. People probably view you as more mainstream, but you can still cut through all of that with shows like this and social media content and, all the stuff that you guys are producing. So it's different. And it's very hard to stay ahead of all this. I admit, it is like, boom, boom. It's moving so fast. It's hard to keep up, but you're just I think we're all just kind of, guessing in terms of what's next while trying to put out the best content we can and continue to know that people are going to find us.
You mentioned at the top of the show, uh, you were in Oklahoma kind of during that first round of the shuffling of the conference when the Pac-12 could have finished off the Big 12 by completing that deal to bring Oklahoma State, Texas, and Tech across to the Pac-12. They'd be doing great. And Kansas State and Kansas might be in the ACC right now, which is kind of weird to think about. But it's just been such a strange journey for this conference. But I kind of get annoyed when people from other conferences try to tell the Big 12 media how realignment works. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, this has been our life.
Yeah.
The Big 12 was born of realignment.
Yeah.
It shut down the Southwest Conference. I mean, don't tell us how to interpret this stuff. We kind of know. And it's weird how a filter's built up. Okay, that's tangible. That's believable. That is just nonsense. And there's sites or shows out there just running with the nonsense show after show after show when there's no chance of this happening. And their numbers are crazy good. It's like, again, almost like what they do in politics now. They say something enough, it creates a false reality. And now you're talking about something that's real. That, by the way, isn't real. No, Washington State and Oregon State aren't on their way to the Big 12. No, I don't see that.
But the headline works. The headline's sexy.
It
right?
does.
And that's that works for some people. But what's this story? I want to go back to 2011. What was it? I think they were within 30 minutes of leaving, right?
Yeah, something like that.
It was like a 30-minute window that they were about to pull the plug. And then I want to say, if my memory serves me right, based on the reporting then, Texas is the one that obviously holds all the cards. And last minute kind of pulled out. But, those four schools, like you noted, were going west. And think about how different the college sports landscape would be. I mean, the Big 12 has been through this time and time again, just kind of salvaging itself. But here's what I really liked about the last batch of realignment versus, almost 15 years ago now. The Angry Eight, as they were dubbed after that shocking report in the Houston Chronicle that dropped in July of 21 that OU and Texas were leaving. The way that these 8 Big 12 schools hung together is something I'll always remember, because that window from late July of 21 till I think it was September 10th when it became reported that the UFC, Houston, Cincinnati, BYU editions were coming. That was a wild 5 to 6 week stretch. You remember it well. I remember it well. And I didn't know if the league was going to make it. The rumors, the reports were running wild. Bob Bowlsby was getting pissed and threatening to sue ESPN, saying they were kind of pulling the strings and all this. That 6 week window, when I'm sitting, on a porch somewhere at 80 something years old, and I'm thinking back on just the Big 12 and college football and covering it, that is a window that I will never forget. And it may very well change the future of college sports forever.
I have a kind of philosophical thought on why the Big 12 survived. And it runs with this, that I've said often that the spine of the Big 12 starts in Ames, runs through Manhattan, Stillwater, and ends in Lubbock. And that's kind of the land grant school, ag-based culture of this conference. Now, not all schools are that way. Kansas isn't that way particularly, although, a lot of their fans have grown up in ag backgrounds. But you don't give up. When you're in the ag world, as I always say, you can't predict the rain. You can't stop the rain. You can't start the rain. You have to deal with the rain. Whatever's happening, you have to deal with it and keep going forward. And that's what the conference did. It almost had a cataclysmic event, dodged it, got healthy, and has had repeated events that would knock out a lot of conferences. And here they are. They're still surviving. And you're right. The Hateful Eight, the Angry Eight, we became really bonded as a group in a way that the Pac-12 didn't get. I don't think the ACC gets. And by the way, ACC, you know why the Big 12 is still here? Because they gave concessions to Texas. They actually gave in. Sometimes your best victory is taking the temporary loss and moving on to the next round, and the Big 12 is still standing. But if the ACC just lets Florida State and Clemson and maybe 2 other schools leave, if they fight their way out, they're done.
Yeah,
they're done. and
Yep.
you just give them some concessions. You got to keep them in so that you can get to the next event.
hmm But I will say the unity that the Big 12 has right now it's just fun to see because it never existed. You go back to
Mm.
2011, everybody was kind of looking over their shoulder ever since saying, well, to your point, what's Texas want now? What are they
Yep.
interested in? I mean, remember, the Big 12 looked as you well remember, but for the audience, let's not forget that it was, I think, 2017, the Big 12 explored expansion. Texas didn't want
Nope.
anything to do with it. So, but that also helped them come 2021 because they had that short list from a couple of years prior when Texas said no dice. So, without that short list from a couple of years prior, who knows how 2021 plays out if they could have turned that thing around in 5 or 6 weeks.
I feel like that time span you just said was really the end of the Big 12 as we know it, because Texas did carry enough votes, forced enough votes from other members to stop Cincinnati and Louisville from coming into the conference. And that was a shame because the conference might still be standing as it was. But Texas, as they were prone to do, always looked out for the best interest of Texas. They've done that from day one. They destroyed the Southwest Conference because that was in their best interest. And I hate to tell the SEC, it ain't going to be a great relationship. They're going to get pissed that other people are getting more attention, and you'll have to deal with it. But yeah, the Big 12, Bob Bowlsby went from the puppet to a guy that you could tell was not happy being the puppet and forced to do what Texas wants. And as soon as he was free of that, he started kicking ass.
Yeah, Bob Bowlsby's, when you look back on his history as Big 12 commissioner, I mean, you're right. Everyone knew that he stepped in at the right time because of all the disaster before his tenure. But he kind of had this arc where it was up and down and up and down and up and down. And it obviously crashed at one point. But to what you're saying, there was only so much leverage he had over Texas to begin with. I can't get on him too much. And then he closed strong. I mean, I think that Bob Bowlsby should be viewed as favorably by Big 12 fans because he only had so much to work with. And then once those two left, he moved quickly and he closed quickly and he didn't take any shit from ESPN or Texas or anybody else. And he kept the angry eight, the hateful eight together too, which was obviously incredibly important during that time. So some people want to rag on Bob Bowlsby's legacy, but I actually think it's pretty positive based on what he realistically could have done before that to how he ended his tenure as the conference commissioner.
He navigated some rough seas and kept the ship off the rocks, and now it's in a much better place. And it looks like the Big 12 is going to survive all of this. Although the latest made up story is the ACC is going to take Big 12 schools.
See, I don't even see, I don't know where you see this stuff. I have not seen it. But listen, I guess I try to avoid as much of it as I can. So I got to come on Life of Fitz and, figure out what kind of nonsense people are doing to try to get clicks.
Yeah. I'm like, why would any school from the Big 12 move to the conference that's struggling now that the Big 12 isn't struggling?
Is that right? Oh my
That's
God.
craziness.
You got
But that's the world in which we live now.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I have a theory, and I want to get your input on this. I think ESPN and Fox will crush college football if left to their own devices. Maybe not intentionally, but just out of their own, I'm going to call it greed, even though it's, corporate trying to make money. I think college football needs a serious third player. Not CBS carrying some games and NBC carrying some games. Now the CW is putting their toe in the water. They need someone to step in, like a Turner or an Amazon. We're all in. We want to start buying rights, and not just some, a lot. Because once that happens, it's not us against them. Now you got this triangle where they can't really align as well. And I think a super conference will destroy college football. That's what they want, I think. And I don't think it's healthy. And we desperately need a Turner or an Amazon in the market.
And I think the Big 12 is prime for that. And
Yep.
before Brett Yormark signed the extension with ESPN and Fox, I think he was exploring it, but he wisely realized the timing.
Yep.
It's not the time. It was not the time 2 years ago. I still don't think it's the time right now. Maybe the next round of TV deals it
Agree.
is. But Yormark realized, I still need these TV partners for just general exposure. You don't want to be stuck on Apple TV Plus. You don't want to be stuck on Amazon unless you're the NFL, where you can get away with it and you can put one game a week on there. So I could see the Big 12 and Yormark being proactive later in the decade, because I have the same fears as you. But it's this awkward deal where if you do a deal with the devil in the eyes of ESPN and Fox, they'll blackball you, and they still hold a lot of the cards when it comes to exposure. Not as much as we've talked about all show long, but still a lot. And I think that's the issue for the Big 12. If you are the third of the three power conferences in 5 years, you don't want to be blackballed by ESPN. So what do you do? And I don't have the answer, but what do you think?
I don't either. And I think Brett Yormark knows darn well, because his connections from the NBA to Turner, now that they've officially lost NBA basketball, that they're going to move into the college space. I mean, they sub-licensed some of the playoff games from ESPN. They're dipping their toe in there, and now they're picking up some other games. And I think if Turner turns their full attention and maybe shifts True TV to an actual all sports platform, which they're apparently doing, they have an opportunity. But you're right. It's going to have to come at the next negotiation, because the only reason I believe that the Big 12 is still sitting here is Brett Yormark had the market savvy to say, well, that number's lower than I want, but if I take that, there's not going to be a number for the Pac-12. Nobody's going to pay it. So he absolutely won the battle by taking a little bit under market value, in his opinion, and closed out the competition, which is what you got to do sometimes.
So is that, and no, you're absolutely right. And is that right? True TV is going all sports. So where do I watch Forensic Files? That's what I got to figure out now.
I'm sorry. Practical Jokers. I don't know that's, that pretty much their tentpole programming.
Yes.
If that's your tentpole,
yeah, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
It's time to move on. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Yormark jumped the line on the Pac-12 and Kliavkov, and it was the right play. I mean, unlike Kliavkov, who was looking for every last penny, and now look how that worked out. Yormark took the slightly under market deal, although frankly, since things have evolved the way they've evolved economically, in the country, I don't feel like it's all that under market. So I think the Big 12 is right now getting a pretty fair deal. Sure, I wish it was more, but without a true blue blood, and I use air quotes when I say it, it's a pretty damn good deal right now. Yeah. And I feel good about it. And I think the Big 12 should as well.
He had a shift at Big 12 Media Days in Las Vegas in June or July. I thought, hold on, was it June? July. I went twice. I went June for personal, July for work. Yeah.
Life of Fitz, baby.
Yeah, I'm still alive. Don't worry. I made it. That we have long, he mentioned it. We've long thought he was going to try to break out basketball into a separate deal. And he really kind of played that down in Las Vegas, which I found a little disturbing. It was almost like the network said, quit talking about this, stop. But I think in the next round, in that 2030 window, when they come around, he's going to look at that, because you mentioned no blue bloods in football, but I think he's found through his consultants that TV is stealing basketball. It's getting it for pennies on the dollar compared to what they should be paying, because it's a lot more content and it holds you up for a number of months, and they're getting it for like maybe at most 20% of the price of football, which doesn't make sense. And I think he's going to get more out of that. Now, the other conferences will follow, but he's also put the Big 12 in a position where it's going to be hard to match the quality of the product. You're just not. The Big 12 is going to have the best basketball brand.
It will. I've always been kind of skeptical of it too, though, because, I mean, you do get a tremendous amount of content, but how much of it ends up on, ESPN Plus?
Right.
And the problem with ESPN Plus is, man, sometimes that product just sucks. You can't flip between games easily. If you've got a game on ESPN2 and ESPN Plus, you got to go, depending on what you use, out of your Roku, out of your smart TV, into another app. It's just a pain in the ass. So I'm not, I'm just not as high. I mean, I'm a huge basketball fan, but I don't know. I've got to see some numbers to believe it, I guess, because I'm still not convinced that I feel like the networks feel like they're probably maybe overpaying for football to get the basketball. And if we're going to truly go, sport by sport, how much of a difference are we really talking here? I don't
Good point.
know, but that's where I just kind of wonder. Football's still king, and the numbers prove it. I mean, when you compare how many people watch the playoff games to the NCAA tournament games or even Big 12 tournament games, it's not even close.
I agree. I see these numbers though for the NBA contract, and I'm like,
Oh,
I don't get this. Granted, I'm not in an NBA area. We don't have a team in, the closest Oklahoma City. Woo!
yeah.
We're college in this area of the country, but I just don't think the NBA has the reach of college basketball. Maybe the numbers are because it consolidates with only like 32 teams, whatever it is. But there's money out there. They're willing to pay it. I don't know where it's coming from.
The NBA feels like it's playing a global sport because the ratings for the finals and just the NBA playoffs in general stink. I mean, they keep getting
Yep.
worse, it feels like, on a yearly basis. And you're right, we're not in a big NBA area, but just look at the ratings. It's not anecdotal to say the ratings are not good for the NBA, but the television contracts are just astronomical. So clearly, there are smart guys with these TV networks and gals with these TV networks who think it's worth the cost, but like you, Tim, I can't figure it out. And then you've got, the seventh guy on the bench signing a $10 million, a year deal. I can't figure it out.
Do you think we're going to see the evolution of the markets where they're going to come in and say, we want Mundo and Fitz. We'll pay you $10 million a year. We're going to take your program. If Skip Bayless can get a program, anyone.
Yes. Although now apparently he's got nowhere to go.
Who wants him?
I don't know who wanted him 15 years ago, but I'm just saying, he's leaving Fox, and ESPN already said they're out on Skip Bayless. So good riddance, I guess.
Oh boy, there he goes. He's going to be on the new TNT Sports Channel. Or whatever it is. True. The last thing Skip Bayless should be on is a station called True.
Yes.
Done that out.
I'll give you a rim shot for that one.
Pete, what's the future of Heartland Sports? What do you got cooking so I can steal these ideas?
Well, right now, listen, it's been a tough year in this space. I'm not going to lie. The economy at large impacts ad revenues for outlets like ours.
Mm-hmm.
You have the social media companies right now doing everything they can to make you pay to see content. And also they want to keep you on their platforms. So, sharing our articles on Facebook, which were always, a pretty popular avenue for us, is more difficult than ever because Facebook says we don't want to promote Heartland's content because, well, if people click on that link, they're not on Facebook. So there's a lot of algorithmic moving parts. If you Google things now, do it yourself. Google AI will just give you the answer versus having to go to a website.
Mm-hmm.
So there's things, it's changing rapidly. And it's been, I think, the most interesting year and also a difficult year just to navigate these waters. And on top of that, you've got a lot of, political stuff in a presidential election year that is consuming content on social media platforms. So for us, it's really just about trying new things, getting involved in, new apps. We're trying out, some TikTok things. And I always said to myself, I'm never doing anything with TikTok, but I had so many people consulting people say, you've got to try it. You've got to just get in there, give it a shot, see what it's all about. So we're dabbling with some of that, but we're trying to create content that people want to consume while also trying to figure out how to best monetize it. Not because we're greedy, but because I got people I want to pay and keep employed. So
exactly,
I get complaints. Oh, there's too many ads here, too many ads there. It's like, listen, we have never asked for a dime from our audience. We provide everything for free. We thought about paywalling things. I don't want to do that right now. If you got to click an X in a box, if you got to listen to a pre-roll on a podcast, I'm sorry, but I like staying in business to pay our guys who are producing the work. We pay everybody. I don't look for anybody to do stuff for free for us. I haven't in years, and I want to pay them fairly. So, that's the challenge we all face right now.
That's been one of my things is no, thanks for volunteering to work for free. No, I'm going to pay people. And if I can't pay them, I shouldn't be doing it.
Exactly. I've always thought, because I've been on both ends. I'm running this, but I'm also, working for a major corporation doing a radio show. And I don't think any of us as content creators should devalue what we do.
Right.
If you provide a good service, if you know what you're doing, if you know how to write, do audio, do video, you should be paid, fairly for that. And I try to do that and do that with all of my guys. Just like I want to be treated that way by, my corporation on the other side. So, there's a lot of people trying to get people to do stuff for free. I've never believed in that. I never will. But as a result, if you have a pre-roll or a mid-roll on a podcast, don't curse me out. All right. We're just trying to make everyone whole here.
Someone's got to pay for this. Somehow.
Uh,
That's why, I start so many of my videos with, please just subscribe. It's free. We're
Yeah.
not charging you anything, but it helps our algorithm reach more people, and then we reach more advertising. And come on, folks, it's free. You got to do something in trade for it. It's an interesting world because ad revenue is down, and it's election year, and it's still down for us. But I don't want the political ads anyhow.
mhm.
Even if I could profit from it, no, thank you. Let's not get that going. But it's been rough. It's been interesting how the market's turned down, and I think we're at about 50% of the revenue we were last year on YouTube, and the views are up.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, no. And I think YouTube is a space that we see a lot of growth potential. I know you do as well.
Mhm.
And I think this is where people are. They're using, YouTube as not just a place to watch stuff, which we always kind of view it as, but it's really a search engine. It's the second biggest search engine in the world after Google. So, use yourself, use your content as a search engine, and suddenly it starts to make more sense. And,
Yep.
they're finding shows like ours and episodes like ours, and they're getting information along with some of the entertainment that comes along with it, and it's engaging, and it's for a lot of people, they prefer the video over reading things. I like both. I think they still both have their places in the market, but obviously things continue to shift in that direction.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things. We still want stories. Yeah, we're still providing them. Yeah, they're fewer. Well, I don't want to listen to anything. Well, you're in the minority. I mean, we have the analytics. There's no more like, well, we kind of think this works better. We have the analytics. We know how much people read, how much people watch, how much people listen, how long, what they click on. Of course, we're going to follow that.
Yeah.
If you run a clothing store, you're going to stock with the clothes that people want.
Yep.
And it's just a weird world. Here I am. I started a magazine 26 years ago, and now I'm talking to a computer in my basement.
When do you stop printing the magazine?
You know what? I honestly can't remember, but I think around 16, 15. And it was literally
weekly, or was it monthly, weekly?
Well, we evolved. We went from, we were weekly for a long time. We were doing a newsprint product, printing at the Slime Journal, and we were weekly during football. So when we started, Becky and I, my wife, were putting out a 32-page magazine weekly, and we were the only full-time people.
Wow.
It was a lot. And I did have employees that paid, some that worked on subscriptions, some were photographers, or just the whole photography thing, how it's evolved. We used to have to run film to Walmart to get overnight processing to have it to do the magazine the next day. And Becky would be up, just going through with a little finder thing, looking at every negative, trying to find the right photos so they get scanned in by the morning. It was crazy what we did.
Wow.
And now I just sit in my basement.
I can't say, as much as I rag on, technology, and I don't really rag on it, but just the way the algorithms are always changing, it's hard to stay ahead. But it is a lot easier when I hear stories like that.
Yeah. My life is so much easier because of technology, and God bless it. Although at some point I'm going to officially become the old man where I just can't learn anymore. I'm done. I'm going to keep
You
using.
got a few years left in you before that happens.
And it's moving so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always promised people, and I want you to give this pledge also.
Okay.
When it comes to hologram going into your home, hologram Fitz and hologram Pete should never go into anyone's living room. It just isn't right. Because you let my hologram in, my hologram's going to go get a beer out of the fridge. I don't know how holograms are going to work in the future, but my hologram's going to be unruly.
I like that. I'm on board with you there, Tim Fitzgerald. I like the sound of that, man. Grab me a beer. I wish our dogs could do that for us, but you know what? If not, that sounds like a good second option.
Yep. Pete, appreciate it so much, brother. Thanks for giving me the time.
Thanks, Tim. Keep up the great work, man.
You bet, buddy. Pete's great. Isn't Pete awesome? He's an incredibly kind person. He does a great job of not communicating with emotion, but communicating with reason, and that has really served him well. His Heartland channel is really good. You can find a lot of stuff on there. They aggregate a lot of news. They create a lot of news. They have great podcasts rooted in different markets. I just love their content, and I admire how he lives in both worlds, the old media and the new media, and is kind of what the new media is about. We can do it both, but we're going to start doing this more and more because that's what the people want. Appreciate you listening to this episode of Life Fitz. We're down to 2 shows this season. I got a great guest for next week, a really personal podcast coming, and still wrestling with how I want to finish the season. But until then, I'll keep working on that. I'll talk to you real soon. I appreciate you listening to this week's edition of Life of Fitz. And thank you to all the great people at Blueville Nursery for sponsoring our show. This has been a Spirit Street production.